Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, ma'am, you would call roll, please.
All right, roll call. President Brett Terheide.
Close enough here.
Vice President Mike Wolski.
Here.
Member Joe Seeker.
Here.
Member Anna P. Here. Member Ed Loud.
Here.
Where you hiding tonight, buddy? We miss you.
Literally just walked in the door, got back from Terre Haute.
Wow. It's a long drive to that time of night. Not because
A little bit.
All right, consent agenda. Anybody have any questions on the claims register or any of the minutes during the meetings that we're talking about? I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying. Oh, you're gonna roll call vote?
Yeah.
All right. Ma'am, you're on. Roll call, yeah.
Roll call.
Yeah.
All right.
It happened after.
President Brett Terheide.
Yes.
Vice President Mike Wolski.
Yeah.
Member Joe Seeker.
Yes.
Member Anna P. Yes. Member Ed Loud.
Yes.
5-0. All right, citizen comments. All right, staff reports. Chief.
We've got range coming up here in the next couple weeks, and a lot of construction going on around town, obviously, we all see it. Trying to get into the neighborhoods more, especially as it gets warmer and school's gonna be letting out, so you probably will see some more, kids on mopeds and whatnot that should not be on the trails and on the sidewalks and whatnot. And when that does happen, just call the non-emergency line so we can get out there as it's going on, because we can't do anything really after the fact. So while it's taking place, we want to take action at that point, so please do that. And Micah, our current canine is retiring at the end of this month, so the 25th, I think, is gonna be his last bout, and Adam's gonna go pick up the new dog, and we will have him at the first meeting in June for you guys to be introduced to her.
Who's taking one?
Adam's gonna keep him, and he's actually was going to retire and go to the good old state of Florida, but Adam's wife's job's changed, and Michael will be living here in Indiana, so.
Anything else? Mr. Lewis.
Sure. We've started some of our pre-budget work. We are updating capital improvement plans and some of the strategic hiring plans so that we can start working with Adam on numbers and figuring out where we need to be for next year. We are talking a little bit about some of the legislative items and what changes were made and what may be coming as well. So we're trying to put some strategies in place for that. There's a lot going on with the sewer projects right now. I showed you guys before the meeting. Jim is finally it's probably 99% gone right now. We're keeping the garage, the new lift station's built. There'll be a new drive put in around the garage so they can take the truck around, pull in, service at the lift station there, and then pull out for circulation. We had the IMMA, the Indiana Municipal Management Conference last week. Christine, Nikki, and Cody went with me. We're trying to work on some of the leadership development, succession planning. Nikki's kind of who we hired in mind for probably being next in line for Christine's spot. And Cody's shown a lot of effort in trying to learn and interest in kind of moving up the chain over time. So we're trying to invest in those ways. But other than that, it's kind of a large report. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
What the wrong meetings?
Yes.
You might have any question on this report? Okay. Mr. Stone. How the heck can you do it, buddy? It's been a long time.
No, it has been a long time. I'm good. I had eye surgery, so I can see you all now 20/20 without glasses or contacts. So I'm excited about that. And so a little fuzzy and small print still, but otherwise, I'll be with you here. And so I have a couple things. One is you all should have a copy of the most recent financial policies draft. We'll cover that. I won't go in total page-by-page term, just to be respectful of everybody's time, but there are some substantive changes since the last initial draft you saw last fall, so I'll just make sure to point those out for you for your consideration. And I'll also spend some time talking about what these are and what these aren't, just to make sure it's clear for the record as far as what you can consider. So, as been mentioned, with May 1st, we really sort of start thinking about the incoming year's budget. Okay, so for the town year budget cycle really runs heavy from May through end of September, and officially we're in 2027 budget kickoff at this point, essentially. So initial planning as far as thinking about capital improvements, staffing, needs, those types of things, all good conversations to be having with your across the departments. Now, revenues, we'll get a sense for what those are going to be as early as July. By August, we'll start to see certified assessed values and information at the earliest, so that you can have good public hearings in May and September. Statutorily, you have to be done by November, but you all have usually historically run well ahead of that. So where do the policies fit in? These are optional policies. The State Board of Accounts in Indiana requires certain ones, all of which you have, okay? So these are really above and beyond the minimum, and there's a couple different ways that can be thought about. One is these are policies that once set would govern how your teams and departments kind of present to not only this council, but a future council as well. So these are a legacy setting policy. We take an action of council to change these once they are adopted. That is a benefit of this. It sets a guardrail for this. But I think that's, in my opinion, I try to be a very non-bureaucratic person. So in the accounting profession, we don't want to set policies that nobody's going to pay attention to and aren't helpful. So over my career, this has actually gotten shorter, not longer. So a lot of these policies and procedures manuals can be significant. They have multiple different sections. We're not really even suggesting any of those for you all right now, because the reality is you're already covering it with your investment program, or you're already covering it with your internal controls program, so there's no reason to add additional complexity. What we did want to suggest and clarify are sort of three anchor policies that are above the state minimum, but will help sort of set a vocabulary and definition not only for this council, but for your teams. And those are the ones that we listed through here, specifically the cash reserves, the debt management, and balanced budget. When we think about the budgetary responsibilities of council, setting the tax rate, setting the budget, managing the treasury of the town, those are certainly key components. There are no actual policies currently that really address any of those outside of the internal controls, the appropriation, and the investment policies. So these would add to that. What the largest, probably most significant, would be the reserves, debt limit aspect, and then the balanced budget. So I'll touch those nuances specifically. So how this will work and why I think it's something that you should consider as an elective sort of policy would be that it allows for you to have a clear vocabulary independent of budgetary pressures. So the policy sets out certain ranges and certain eligible uses when we're not in the heat of a budget discussion. You know what I mean? And it sets that framework where it's sort of the old adage, cooler heads prevail. The policy is trying to be that cooler head, so it's trying to create safeguards where if any of those safeguards are sort of crossed, staff has to actually come to you all. It points it all back to council, so you make the final decision. It does not supersede that. If anything, it actually points more to you versus less. Okay, it tries to define and take away both ways. So that's sort of the overview. Any questions so far? So if you want to just turn the page then, so page 2 shows cash reserves, debt management, non-pledge. I'll define each and kind of overview, and then I'll touch on a couple of the specific nuances in each that I think would be of importance. Then I'll open it up for questions. So the cash reserves defined as how do we define how much excess funds the town has? How do we know what a healthy range is? And how do we know when a fund should be on a watch list? How do we know when a fund? And where this gets tricky is across the town, all your funds have different purposes. Some funds are operating funds and they have payroll. Some funds are debt service funds. Some are bond proceeds. Some are restricted in use. So the policy actually outlines in that specific section of the policy, outlines and defines funds by type, and then it makes it to where then as certain new funds come and go, if they're within a certain type, it provides certain criteria. The key sort of takeaway is on page 7. So it starts by defining what a governmental operating fund is. An operating fund elsewhere in the policy is defined as a fund that pays people. Okay, so if payroll is administered from a specific fund, it is deemed or defined an operating fund. In other words, if we have part of the town's employee base being compensated from a fund, that one has certain additional requirements with respect to reserves. So from practical plain English, we don't want to run out of cash for the fund that has payroll obligations. Okay, so essentially what it's doing is it's setting 3 different tiers, sort of below, between, or above. And we actually set this at actually from a best practice level, not a minimum level. So that way, 2 reasons. In some of your funds and some of your bond covenants, they actually have requirements that are below these levels, so we didn't even want to come close to that. Okay, for example, your utility operating funds that have debt, they have a covenant that says their operating fund cannot be less than 2 months of the budget, which would be 16.67%. So we just said it that we don't want to be less than 25, which is 3 months, just to make it to where you don't have to be tracking that close. So it's essentially coverage on that covenant. So practical way that this would be done, per the policy, our treasurer staff, as part of their normal reporting, we go through, pull the most recent information, and compare it to the budget information that's available. And if in that payroll fund, it is the cash on hand is less than 25% of the budget, or essentially 90 days of working capital, if you're familiar with that terminology, then we deem it as a watch list, okay? But that basically does, it triggers the policy that they have certain reporting requirements that have to be done there, okay? Anything that's between 25 and 50 is green, that's good. That I could spend 4 hours talking about why that range works out well, but the shortcut is, in 15 years of doing this, we've seen 2 times where we needed that 50%. One was in a situation statewide where there was a disruption in tax bills, and it took some months before the counties to figure out how to get the property tax from the county coffers to the city town coffers, hence why we went with 50%. And then more recently, COVID, that crazy spring that came in when everything was being shut down, the governor actually stepped in and actually deferred property tax payments for 2 months. So all things being said, anything between a 25 and 50% realm is deemed healthy. That is not only just my opinion, that's the GFOA, State Board of Accounts, multiple other sources back that range up. So then if you're an operating fund and you're over 50%, you get sort of the gold star, which is essentially you're in this sort of surplus reserve. And that the policy opens up sort of opportunities to be considered for those types of excess funds. In that case, invest, be strategic for capital projects, buy down debt, pay off leases, those types of things. Deploy the capital, essentially.
And I noticed when I read this, the clerk treasurer is supposed to run this on June 30th.
Yeah.
Here, see if they're on track.
Yep.
is it your recommendation, it's in the dates in there, is it your recommendation to set it more often or just biannually?
Yeah, great question. That is, so the policy should really be read as the minimum. So the policy is once per year they shall, but certainly this could be a monthly status update. Okay, the policy is the floor. Okay, so that's probably the meat and potatoes of the reserve. It goes through, and then because there's other fund types, it talks about other funds and how their balances should be, like what a good balance is on other funds. But from the practical matter, what this is really trying to do is empower the council and empower your team to understand, hey, we need to watch this fund, this one's getting a little cash tight. If I was on council, if I have a fund on the watch list, I'm probably not approving additional appropriations, as an example. Versus if I have a fund that's clearly above its reserve target, I'm thinking, how can we use that excess funds to be more strategic, right, in a general sense, okay? So that's kind of the overview. The next one I would jump to would be debt. It starts on page 12. Debt has had, sorry, it is actually, too smooth.
Page 13.
Yep. The debt management has largely stayed the same from the version you saw last fall. We did update it for the legislative adjustments from 25 and 26. Basically, in short, this is really just an acknowledgement of current state law. So you'll see things in here that, for example, like a redevelopment authority, you don't have a redevelopment authority. But we wanted to make it to where anything that was permissible in state law, the bond capability, is within your policy. So there's nothing less or more than is authorized here. Most important thing is it talks about, it does specify, like in a competitive sale or a private placement, how specifically you're going to make those. You're going to make those based on kind of the lowest net interest costs, not like who has the best relationship or something like that. Okay. It does codify the debt limit. As well as how you're going to calculate it, how it's going to be monitored and tracked, etc. Then the last one that we have in here.
And Adam, it looks like we have 25% across the board.
Yes. Then the last one, starting on page 25, is the balanced budget one. I started my career as a budget director, so this one, this is my love language, so we can, I would highlight all of you for doing this. I wish our federal government would pass a policy that says this. But basically, what this basically says is that by policy, you all want a balanced budget every year. Okay, so it's no longer a goal, it's the policy. Okay. Secondly, I'm a math nerd, self-proclaimed. You can gain numbers pretty easily on budget. For example, there are communities that balance their budget with one-time ARPA money, and they were very happy about that. And then ARPA went away, and there's been communities that fund their public safety budgets on short-term safer grants and those types of things, right? So the policy, I would say on this one, the headline is you have a balanced budget policy. The details and the definitions of what a balanced budget is. So specifically, if you look at the first definitions, it starts on page 25. It starts to actually define to staff what recurring and non-recurring revenues and expenses are. And the balanced budget is defined as recurring revenues equal recurring expenses. Okay? So if you all choose to do a one-time capital expense out of your surplus reserves, that does not change the definition that your budget is balanced, because you inherently are spending the money one time on a non-recurring expense. Conversely, we don't want you to say you have a balanced budget because we issue bonds, right? That would be the opposite of that. We balanced our budget, but we balanced it with a non-recurring one-time revenue. Okay? So the crux of this policy is really in the definitions, and the shortcut is we're basically saying, hey, we want a balanced budget, more specifically as defined as recurring revenues meet or exceed recurring expenses. So it just puts a little bit more burden on how your budget is presented to you all. And again, that's where I think the biggest pro of this is that you all get to dictate and control it and bind it. Also, it allows vocabulary for future presentations to the council to now use a reserve ratio that you understand and budgetary terminology that's defined, open. So those are probably the big substantive changes. Everything else is largely in line. I want to give a note of gratitude to the town manager and clerk treasurer who have reviewed this thoroughly, provided red lines, provided comments, all of which we have tried to incorporate. This is presented as draft. This is ultimately going to be town property. I wanted you to understand it and you should be comfortable with it. Most importantly, this should probably be updated at least every couple of years. So our recommendation at handoff is to, every 2 years or so, as part of maybe your officers meeting or something like that, go through and just see if there's any reason to update it. From time to time, we'll provide, if there's any state law change or best practice change, we'll suggest to the town manager and clerk treasurer, hey, we think you should consider this new page edit or whatever. But ultimately, once adopted, it's yours. You have the Word document version of it as well to make any kind of edits internally. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
That's pretty straightforward, right?
Well, I just commend you all in a time of uncertainty, in a time where a lot of communities and governments are, this is different. This is different to be thinking this far in the future and be trying to be this transparent. I wish that a lot of your neighbors in Indiana would do the same. So appreciate the time you've been in. Again, I think the town manager and treasurer have done a great job. It's in their court, Daryl's court. If there's any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, as we move towards actually reviewing the 2027 budget and going, if these get adopted, we can, kind of communicate and present that budget in line with these new terminologies. Okay, thank you so much.
And thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, does that take a motion to vote on with the resolution?
It is introduction. We talked about it briefly, but as more work session, we introduced actual ordinance to that.
New business, introduction of ordinance 2026-05, by operating golf carts, pad areas.
Essentially, we've been getting a lot of golf cart calls more and more over the past few years. We haven't had a true golf cart on town streets policy. So we kind of put that together, looked at different models throughout the area. This is one we liked because it takes the neighborhood to work together to declare it a golf cart community. We get signatures and then signage posted for safety, largely requires them to follow the traffic laws, be licensed and those type of items if they're on town roads and prohibiting them from sidewalks and other things. So, this is more or less the model that Noblesville used. There's more restrictive, less restrictive models of that. It's kind of the middle ground. So it's for introduction tonight, any changes, concerns, you guys want to, we can do that for the next meeting.
And I noticed in the back, we talked about peddlers and violations. Is this for any violation of the section, of the sections, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if they don't have headlights or taillights on.
Yeah, which obviously they could be warned in those items as well. We say,
Sure.
like we do education, say, hey, you need to do this is the policy, bring it out.
Gotcha. I love my golf cart, I just pretty much should go to Ken River's yard, that's about it, like,
That's what's
we do have a few in our neighborhood.
So, about giving this to the homeowners associations, I will give it to mine. in
Yeah,
my district.
We would get with the other ones too. We probably put a link in resource and utility billers and things like that too for the county website. And
Yeah,
it would take a strong education campaign.
mine will put it on Facebook.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely do all that, get visibility on it.
Because I did like the acceptance piece for the HOAs there, that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
So,
Christine did a nice job.
so yeah, I think she touched this one, but.
Christine's great.
All right, you guys have any questions or changes or concerns? Jewel wanted to go with Westfield's model, but I thought that was a little very.
Yeah, just let them go on everything, everywhere.
Gotcha.
All over.
Wow, it's easy. I thought maybe the ordinance was about 8 It's a long one. Thanks, Ben, very much.
It's definitely needed.
Yes.
I've seen like 12 kids on a golf cart
That's
go
mainly
up on the
the plan.
curb and almost flip it right in front of my house.
We're seeing a
I
lot
went
of
down and told parents.
almost bad situations with kids driving, and then sometimes other kids driving a car and some close calls. I know Lenox has had a lot of issues, and we've had some other calls from Bowerbrook and some other places. So.
All right, item number 2 on new business, Mr. Lewis.
I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about the Lions Park House again, see if you guys would allow me to look at what it would take to demo it. We've been sitting on it for several years now. We've always wanted to keep the park property. It's anytime you have an unoccupied home, we have it mothballed, but there's definitely issues with maintenance and deterioration. So we think the land is more valuable than the home itself for parks and things and parking and trail connectivity and those things. So I'm just asking for a consensus to get some pricing on that for you.
I know we've looked at several options on that house, right? I hate tearing down the grounds. But I know the options we looked at just aren't probably going to work for us, especially when it comes to an ADA compliant issue. That's a problem. So,
I agree, I would love to keep it, but realistically, I know
yeah,
it's not
that's the
something
problem.
to do.
I assume we're going to keep the building in the back still. I know when we looked at options on the house, there were several options given on the building that might be more usable for Lions Park sometime in the future.
That's right, we want to keep the whole large structure. So.
What about the sheds?
Sheds aren't in great condition, we want to take them out. So.
Just too cost prohibitive on that property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Old, but it's gotten too old in the wrong spots.
Yeah.
To make it.
And like we talked about in our insurance meeting too, like they'll only insure unoccupied homes up to certain values and things too, so.
So, is that home, is that all one parcel? The acreage and the house?
It is, because we didn't combine that, I don't think we combined it, I think it's still parceled out separately.
It is parceled out separately?
Yeah, and it goes from basically the tree line all the way to our driveway. There's only so much parcel and access we have on the Lions Park Drive over to that property. But,
I was just gonna say, the only other option would be parcel that out, just a small yard and sell
you know, currently we have our trail path from Harvest Glen also going very close to the home and stuff too. And, yeah, I just don't know if it's worth that too. And, like I said, we probably have to put work into it or sell as is, and selling as is, then it's kind of who's going to purchase as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am fine with getting quotes on what it would cost to raise the house and the sheds.
No,
Thank you.
Does anyone have any quotes anyway, the other 2 homes, right? That would come out.
The
Foursquare is a good.
No, the ones we had the hearings on.
that's correct.
They don't seem to be compliant.
Yeah, we most likely will.
Any other new business, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, council comments.
I'd like to thank the street department for getting Hugo done real fast. It looks good, nice, smooth. Good job, guys.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted, you got something with the Yorkshire?
Yes, I just wanted to give a few thank yous to our town planner, our staff, for the support that they've given us on the BZA for our case that just finished yesterday. And also Joel too, gave us a lot, gave me personally a lot of support on that. Also the training that they've done planning wise, we've had multiple planning sessions. I know Joel did the one on the weekend out in Greenfield. I know Christine was involved with that a lot. And we've just been getting great support from them in training, especially with the new thing that came out with the government, the changes in laws that we have to do. She gave us really good training on that last meeting. And also, one last thing was thanks to the street department for filling the no man's zone holes this week. They were out in the rain yesterday morning filling them.
They just got the hot box patcher back from the shop, so they got that right away.
Yeah, we're in that little section of 21st Street between Valley Brook and Cumberland Road, which is really Marion County, but they don't think of it. So I asked them a couple of weeks ago, and they got those filled in the rain yesterday morning, so thank you for that. That's all.
Thanks, Ted, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted, for what all you do also.
I'm kind of a pain in the butt for her a lot of times.
She never tells us that. Any other council comments? Nope, move on. Future agenda items, I know you will probably purchase in for estimates, I'll probably, so I would imagine. So I guess we'll make a golf cart ordinance.
Golf cart, and we'll have policy, actual ordinance or consensus, financial policies.
Okay.
You guys have a few other things that will be coming. We're talking about potentially having you guys convene the Parks Board meeting after the council meeting next time. And then we are looking at, we want to bring in Epic Insurance to present to you guys as well. They're on the liability side, and we've had some conversations with them, Caitlin and I did. We think you guys will like their approach. The inventory mapping thing, we can kind of take you through that. And if you guys move that direction, it would be same cost as what we're at today. You guys are gonna have, at the Parks Board meeting, there'll be stuff for Parkview Village Phase 1, park for the Land Water Conservation Fund, Morphe Construction did that playground. So we're gonna, Caitlin, and we'll most likely be presenting that to you guys at the Parks Board meeting.
We get to see the details of it.
Yep. So we'll get that out in advance too, so you can look at that playground design.
Have we looked at what kind of subcommittees we're going to need regarding the Parks Board, and who might be players on that?
Yeah, we looked at Recreation Committee. We have a few interested in that. We have names for you guys and recommendations on that.
And they'll probably do that next time also. Yep. All right, any additional questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Bye, Ed.
Bye, Ed.